Hi, everyone, and welcome to another social science coffee break. I'm Stacy Allen, and I am joined today by my amazing my amazing Paul, uh, colleague Paul Rombo, and we are here to showcase two resources for you, one for the elementary level and one for the secondary level that promote digital competency alongside of their social studies or social sciences uh, competencies. So today, my resource is Indigenous Territories adapting to the territory or adapting the territory. This activity is using a Google map where students have to research an Indigenous community in Quebec and research basically how the community has adapted to the territory or how they have adapted the territory to suit their needs. So it's an interesting conversation to have about humans shaping the territory and the territory shaping us as humans and societies. What I love about this activity is that, of course, it brings in mapping, which is a wonderful skill for students to explore. But also, I love that it shows the continuation of time. So when students are learning about Iroquois nations around 1500 and Algonquin nations, and then they're learning about specific nations of like the Inuit Nation around 1980, and then the Mi'kmaq Nation around 1980. This activity is showing a continuation into the present, showing how different nations and different communities are living and thriving today on the territory. So this activity is for cycle 3. I will show you where it exists on societies and territories. You can find it either by under societies for 1980. You can also find it under resources by type and click on mapping activities. The resource includes an activity guide here. And again, it can be done with Google Maps, but also Cartograph software, which is mapping software available through Learn. So here you'll see the student booklet. It guides students to creating their own Google My Maps, how to name their map, how to add points to their maps and descriptions. And then students will do their research about that society. So they could either use kind of a Padlet that we have with different information about different societies, or they could use other resources. They could contact people in the community, however they want to do that inquiry-based research. So here again, you'll see at the end, there's a link to Padlet with some of the different resources about different nations and communities. Okay. It is sorted as you see by nation. Okay. Yeah, and then it guides students how to share their map with others. And the idea is that students would share their map with one or two other people and also explore the maps of other people and then get more of a global look of how different communities are living on the territory today. So that is all for my resource today. I'm going to pass it off to Paul, where he will share a wonderful secondary resource for you today.
Thanks a lot, Stacy. You do great work. It's wonderful to see the social sciences elementary site developing like that with all those great resources that use technologies like mapping tools, which, as many of you know, I love. I'm going to show you a resource that's using a mapping tool called Cartograph, as Stacy mentioned, but you could use it in Google Maps as well. And it's a new resource I'm working on just recently on local industry connections. Um, Basically, our theme this month is local history, but also and geography, and also mapping tools. And this is a combination of both those ideas, and it's brand new. Basically, what it is I'm asking students in this scenario, which is a brief part of a larger learning experience, to actually go out to their community and take pictures of examples of industry in their community or connections to industry. In other words, they might be in an industrial sector, but they also might not be, and there might be roads to that would lead to that industrial territory and so on. So the nature of mapping is that students get to appropriate, is that the word? They make it their own when they map an exact location. Those two students map it the same, and in this case, it's very much their own because it's about their own community and how they see their community. Maybe they've taken the car that weekend with their parents, and they've got to see different things that other students didn't. So they do that in the context of a larger industrial world, which is this activity I've been developing down here. So you see, linking right to the local connections scenario on Cartograph. So I'll show you that. This is Cartograph. As Stacy mentioned, it's a mapping tool like Google My Maps, and basically the instructions are down here. When you know enough about industry in general, in other words, when you're at a certain key part in the learning process with your teacher, you'll go out and take 5 photos of industrial connections in your town, and you start the map. You zoom in to an area, and then you start the map. You create a legend. So I'm hoping to put up some symbols related to specifically for this activity, but you can pick any of the legend items that are appropriate and place markers or zones on your map to map those locations and your photos. And once they're up in a cartograph, you can actually open up a window like in Google My Maps, but it has a little more power in the sense that you can add a description, but you can also add videos, links, and you know, attach images. So you can attach the photos and explain the connection. So I'll just go back to the slide and mention that was developed in a larger activity set, LES type of activity set that I'm working on, where basically you learn about industry. So I've got the mapping mission that I just mentioned at the beginning, but I noticed I put when you know enough, so a teacher could choose to put this scenario at any point in the learning process. So the learning process will include what is industry, the 3 levels of industry, what is an industrial territory, which is the main idea of the unit, and how it works, where in Quebec those industrial territories are, just a general overview. But notice that some of the territories they're talking about is St. Lawrence area as well. So there's lots of territories that are included in here, including, for example, like on Toronto and so on. So if a student was able to say this is a connection to an industry that's in Toronto, for example, a car industry or something like that in Oshawa, they could justify that this is an industrial connection, even in their community, because that's the connection to the industrial territory outside of their community. So you can see how it could be done later in the learning process whenever a teacher wants to. Now, my plan is to extend that and make a second scenario. And it's not quite finished yet, but I'll scroll down through it. Location factors, reasons why the industry's located there. Um, and here, mapping exercise. I'm actually hoping that students will, in groups, go to a specific region and a specific area and map specific companies in that area, the types of industries in that area. So they become experts in another area, as well as recognizing industrial connections in their own area. And who knows, maybe they could see the connection between their area and this specific area as well. But that's another mapping scenario I'm going to add to the end of this unit, which will allow students to you know situate in space and time and explain the industrial sector and the specific industrial functioning in that area. So that is my resource related to Stacy's resource, also using mapping. And hope you have a great day. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Stacy, for sharing that. And we'll see you next week with another resource we will share.